Good morning, and welcome to our webinar on how to create FME server apps that involve no code. We're really excited and really appreciate you all joining us this morning or the afternoon or the evening, depending on where you are. So my name's Don Murray, and I'm pleased to be presenting with Laura and Christian. So do you want to introduce yourselves, Laura and Christian?
Sure, I'll go first, I guess. I'm Chris. I'm part of the FME Desktop Technology Experts team.
And hi, good morning. I'm Laura, and I'm part of the FME Server Experts team here. So excited to be here for this webinar this morning.
Yeah. My name's Don Murray, and I'm one of the founders of SAFE. And Laura and Christian are going to do the heavy lifting. I'm here. I'm hugely excited. I spent a lot of my time thinking and working with the group at FME Server, and so we're excited to be here this morning. So we're going to go over a couple of things. So I'll just quickly run through the agenda. First, we're just going to start at the highest level and just define what is a web app, talk about a few benefits, and then we're going to get right into how to build one, the two types of apps that we have, Workspace Apps and Gallery Apps. And then we'll basically talk about how you can get started building your own. So we're super excited. This is one of the major things in FME Server. It was introduced in 2020, and you're going to see when we say no code, we mean no code. So yeah. So with that, I think we'll hand it off to Laura, who will talk a little bit about what are web applications.
Okay, thanks, Don. Yeah, so we'll just start with some brief definitions just to make sure we're all on the same page and we're all talking about the same kind of thing here today. So web applications, so essentially it's just any program that's delivered through some kind of a browser interface. So it could be something like your web browser on your regular laptop or mobile device, something like that. So really basically any web page that does not have static content, so something that you can interact with on the page would basically count as a web application. So that can be things like your Gmail account if you're logging in through your web browser, or something like Google Maps or any kind of website where you're interacting with it, or online shopping or anything like that. Yeah, so web applications themselves can help increase efficiency, accessibility, and flexibility across your organization. So when we talk about this, we'll just talk about some of the benefits of web applications in general. Just on the next slide here, thanks. So yeah, web applications, you can create them to kind of handle basically any kind of tasks that you're doing frequently within your organization. So it could be anything from just a simple form that you need to fill out on a regular basis, or more complex tasks that need to be done maybe less frequently, but can be complicated to do without the help of some kind of simplified interface to make that happen. So these can help make your business operations more efficient just by having a single place for people to come, enter information, or get information that you need. Web applications should be customizable, so it should be easy to make updates to those and really make them your own, so they fit kind of how you work within your organization. You want to make sure they're accessible on any browser or mobile device, just to make it as easy as possible for anyone to access those and use them when they need it. And also yes, they should be scalable and secure as well, so only the people who should see it can see it. Scalability, if you have a lot of people all using it all at once, you should be able to kind of handle the loads, and that application should be able to run pretty seamlessly no matter what happens. And these should be easy to build and maintain compared to standalone applications. So they should be pretty simple to put together and make and use.
Yeah, and there's also, for like IT, of course, there's no, traditional applications, there is that whole install nightmare. If you had thousands of desktops, you'd have to go from desktop to desktop to desktop, which was real hassle. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can make a change to your app, and anyone who has like a web browser can access that and use it immediately, which is really good. Yeah, and traditionally these web apps, they can be difficult to build, so you do need to know how to code and how to make these websites stable and accessible and easy to use. So yeah, so they can be a little bit of a hassle to put together. So you do need that custom code to create an application that works for your business needs and all that. There can be confusion about where to start, what kind of infrastructure you need in place before you can get to building these kinds of things, just not having the proper tools, or it's expensive to potentially hire an outside development team to come in and do some consulting for you and build those custom applications. But we think web applications should be for everyone, and you shouldn't be limited by needing to code or the cost of hiring someone to come and build things for you. So that's where we at SAFE come in.
Yeah, and Laura was before the web apps on FME Server. Laura, Laura does know how to code and know how to build really great looking web apps, and so she was instrumental in us as we built this. We would say, okay, Laura, can you do what you were doing before with custom code and to build these nice gallery of applications, and so yeah, so now with the FME Server web apps, even I can do this. I know how to code, but I didn't grow up doing web coding. So yeah, so this comes all the way back to our mission and how this fits in. So our mission at SAFE is really simple. It's to help organizations maximize the value of their data. And so with web apps now, they sit obviously on top of data. FME has this ability to connect to more types of data than any other app platform. And so now with this web apps and some FME skills for workspaces, you can build amazing solutions that you can deploy across your organization. Yeah, so SAFE, we build this platform called FME, and there's a number of tools. There's the desktop where you build these workspaces that combine data. You're going to see a little bit of that. We're not going to, this is a very high level work, so we're not going to get too much into desktop. And then servers where all this automation happens. And there's two major ways that FME Server enables automation to happen. One of them is connecting applications together. So if you do something in one application, the data can be pushed to another application, enabling disparate applications to work as one. The other one is what you're seeing today, which is this FME Server Apps, making it really easy for people to build these solutions on top of FME Server so that data is more distributed. The power of the data is more distributed across the organization. And FME Cloud is our cloud offering, and it is FME Server that is hosted in the cloud. There's other cloud offerings which we'll see later, but our cloud offerings are FME Server merely hosted, so that then you do not have to deal with infrastructure purchases and things like that. Yeah, so we're going to see today that there's two types of applications. We're going to see that there's these workspace apps. So if you build a workspace in FME Server, and you're going to see there's different types, data streaming, data download, and just job submitter. And once you've built that, you can build a really nice graphical interface in the web that's got your corporate look, so that people who are using it across the organization will not even know that it's FME Server, because it should just look like any other web application in your organization. And the second one, which is brand new for FME 2020.1, is this notion called gallery apps. And this is this ability to pull many of those together into one landing page. That can be a landing page both for FME Workspace apps, but also for any other URLs or other apps. So now you can use FME Server as sort of the landing page for all your work, and you can branch it off to many other things. And yeah, so this is what we're really excited about. And Christian and Laura are going to take us the rest of the way. So
yeah, so I guess we'll start off by talking about how to build a web app, more specifically using the FME platform. One of the things that you have kind of heard throughout this webinar is that you don't need to know any coding to build these. The nice thing about it is you really only have to have a basic understanding of how to author a workspace in FME Desktop. For those of you who aren't familiar with FME Desktop, that's just the application where you build the workflows with readers, transformers, and writers, and then you can go ahead and publish those workflows up to FME Server.
And speaking of FME Server, yeah, this is where you can really take your workspaces to the next level. So you publish this up to kind of an enterprise level environment that provides different tools for being able to automate how these workspaces run. And the one key piece that we'll be talking about a lot today are these server apps. Once your workspace is up into the FME Server environment, you can create the different types of applications on top of these workspaces pretty much right away with no code or anything like that.
Awesome. So it's time for our first demo, and let's actually take a look at publishing a workspace and creating our first web app, server app, sorry. So let's open up a workspace. Now, this workspace has already been prepared for us, and just again, very quickly for all the new people out there, workspaces have to start with either a reader, which will be basically this yellow object, but on the left side, that would be your source data, or using a creator transformer to create a feature which will then pass through the transformers down the line. These blue guys here are transformers, and all the transformers have different uses. So they're essentially the tools that do the work. They can change the geometry, change the attributes, or do anything like an upload or an anonymized point as well. Now, the main thing that we want to point out in this workspace is this is a very basic one, but we're using what are called published parameters. So this is going to be one of our first tips as we go along for things that you should be aware of when you're putting together workspaces for web apps. And using published parameters is a great way to get users to input data, input their information, so it can be used in the workspace. So let's just take a look at this first one here. So what we're going to see when we actually create our first workspace app is that there will be a text box where users can enter in their name or community handle. And we're actually going to send this link out to you guys later so you guys can test it out for yourself. And it'll be a bit of an interactive demo so we can see how things move along as well. One thing to notice with published parameters is that there's many different types. And I think by default, it usually picks text, but there's a lot more options, and a few notable ones that I tend to use often are choice with alias, and the new geometry one as well. So we'll just hop into a second one here. Let's talk about the what industry do you work in one. So this is using the choice type. This allows me to enter in a specific list of values that users can enter in. So this is great if you need to have specific inputs into your workflow. If you want to give the user a bit more flexibility, you could set it to choice or text, and that would allow them to kind of type in. So say I worked in the telecommunications area. If I started typing in telecommunications, it would fill in the rest, and I could select it from the list. Or if it's not quite right, I could change it to teleworking. So I can just enter in whatever I want. And we'll see that more on the web interface. It doesn't really load down on this default value area. And the last one here is geometry. So this is a bit of a new one. And this allows users to either draw a point, a line, or a polygon, or if you want to allow them to do all three, you can also do that. So basically it pops open a map and allows you to draw some geometry, some vector features. And these are all just in GeoJSON. So this is the first little bit, is just talking about parameters. We built our workspace and now we're ready to publish it up to FME Server so we can create it into a workspace app. So let's go ahead and publish FME Server with that publish to FME Server button. I already have a connection configured, so I can go ahead and click next and work my way through the wizard. We have to give it a name. I already have it up on FME Server, so I'm going to see this warning pop up. That's not a big deal. Any connections that you are using in your workspace will have to be uploaded, but again, mine is already here, so we can go ahead and continue. And then we get to the services. So we're going to talk a bit more about these later on, but at a very high level, the data download does just that. It will process the data and then return it as a URL in a zip file so the user can download the data. Data streaming would be more showing the data in the browser. So if you had a PDF, an HTML page, anything like that, it would actually show up right then and there after the workspace or after the job has completed on FME Server. And the last one, the one that we're going to use for this particular workspace, is the job submitter. So this is simply just running the job. So all we're going to be doing here is getting some user information and putting it into our Postgres database, and you can use that later. So we'll go ahead and publish that. And now it's ready to go. So I can open up FME Server from the translation log, And now here we go, just rearrange that. So this is the FME Server Web UI. And for those of you who haven't used, I believe 2019.1 was when server apps were introduced. Don or Laura, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you haven't used 2019.1 yet, this will be a bit new to you. So there's the server apps option in the dropdown now. The one that we're going to focus on first is building a workspace app. So as Don mentioned, there are the two different types. There's workspace apps and gallery apps. Workspace apps can be linked inside galleries, and they're essentially just a nice page where it allows users to see all the parameters and run the job. Nice and simple. So building our first workspace app is very simple. We just have to, oh, my mouse has died on me. There we go, got it back. We just have to give it a name, and this name will help us to manage it in the Manage Workspace Apps area. So if you remember that name, you'll be able to search for it down in that Manage Workspace area. Next, we have to give it a title. Sorry, not a title. The title's for the gallery app, so we'll use that one later. Next, we'll give it a description. I like to use descriptions because it gives users a little bit more information about what they're going to do. These don't have to be exhaustive. They don't have to be paragraphs long. Anything short and sweet that helps users understand either what's happening with the parameters or what they could expect the output to be. From there, we simply just have to point it to the workspace that we just published. That was published to my personal repository, and it's called user location. So I have that ready to go. And then we see there's the authentication option. So if we want, we can lock this down to a specific set of users, either managed by a role or by individuals themselves.
Yeah. Good.
So we'll keep that one open for now. When we open up the parameter section, you can see that these are the same parameters that we had defined in that workspace. So you have all the same options. You can see that now we'll open up the geometry picker here. So this is where users can zoom in, kind of pan around and go to the full extent or zoom into their location more specifically. And this is where they can enter in points. So they can just drop it there, or if that's not quite right, they can delete it. So we'll clear that one and we'll drop a point over there. So that's kind of how the geometry picker works, and it's a great way to get users to input their specific location. The last little bit here is just the customization part. So this is where you can really make it look and feel like it was built for your organization. So let's go ahead and add a specific title for that page. The gallery logo image, we will just go to right now. So that's going to be our logo, and our browser icon, we'll use this location one. Lastly, here we have this run immediately option. Now, in this case, since we need the users to input data, we're not going to use that because that wouldn't be very helpful. We need the users to input their data, so it can't run immediately. But on a separate app, we will have it run immediately when we don't have any inputs required. So we're all set here. We can go ahead and click OK. And just like that, our first workspace app has been created. So this is what the output would look like. You can share this URL out to any user, or if it's locked down to any specific users or roles, you would require users to log in first before they can access this.
Nice, nice.
So I'll hop back in here. And we'll talk a bit more about the best practices that we use here. So just to touch again on the publish parameters, you got to use the right publish parameter for the job, because really there's so much more than just a text parameter. You saw that there's the choice parameters, there's choice of text, geometry, but there's also the options to make them required or optional. We're going to send out a URL in just a little bit where you guys can enter in your own information. And I believe I require all the inputs to be filled. The next thing is default values. So if you had a value that is commonly used, you can specify that, and then it'll be pre-filled for the users when they open the Workspace app. So that's just a nice little way to help speed things up for the end users. And then Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about web services?
Yeah, actually, just before we get into that, I wanted to make a quick comment about that geometry parameter type, because I
Sure.
think that is a huge one. I think that's definitely worth highlighting, especially in the context of
Mhm.
these apps. Because I think looking back at my experience in having to write custom code to build different apps on top of Workspaces and FME Server, probably the number one reason I would have to resort to custom code for these is in order to create some kind of a geometry picker. So having that built into the product is massive. So I think that makes a huge difference for these. Um, yeah.
Mhm.
So on top of that, yeah, web services. These are really good too. These provide just different ways to handle the output that's created by these workspaces. So you have ways, something like the job submitter will let you run the workspace as is if you're updating things in a database and that kind of thing, and you don't need to return any input back to the user. That's a good one to use. And the data streaming and data download. Data streaming will let you kind of stream the output file directly back to the client that's requesting it. So in the context of these web apps, you'll get that that file returned directly back to your web browser. So if you're streaming things like an HTML file, PDF, and things that are easy to open in any kind of client, that's a great choice. And data download's great for being able to provide kind of a zip file of multiple files or information that a user is trying to download. And this last section here with iframes, so when you actually create these apps, you can choose to embed those into other web pages and that. So if you have your own web page internally and you'd like to still make use of that, but also have the power of these FME server apps, you can use something like an iframe to embed those apps directly into your other web pages to make use of those as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, so we can actually take a look at that right now. What that would look like, /demos. What the iframes would look like are just like, it's probably down at the bottom of the list now. Oh, there we go, it's at the top right. So what that would look like with the iframes is, we're just on our safe.com/demos page, and you can see that the server app has been embedded in the page here, and we can expand it to full screen as well. So it's just a nice option that you do get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put those back up. Control over here. All right, now it's Q&A time. So if you guys do have any questions, please do chat them out in the questions panel. But while we're waiting for some questions to come in, let's actually send out our gallery app that we've prepared for you. So this is going to be a bit of a fun interactive demo, and we do need your help to make this successful. So we're going to get, Steph, I believe you can chat out the URL for this. It's just in the slide.
I copied the one in the slides, the blue
Awesome.
sky one.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. So what this is going to do is give you guys a feel of what it's like to be an end user on a gallery app. So for this gallery app, I've prepared a couple of different links, and we're just going to let you guys play around with this first before we dive into creating a gallery app. But basically what you see here is there's a bunch of different links here. These first three are a couple of different workspaces. So these are Workspace apps. First one is the user info app that we just created. The second one is an attendee map. So we'll see that once people fill in their user information, we'll be able to see them streamed back to us on an attendee map. So this is going to be our job submitter. This will be our data streamer. And the last one is webinar materials. So for any of you who want to see the workspaces, get the slides, or a certificate for attending this webinar, do check out the webinar materials, and you'll be able to see an example of the data download. The remainder of the links are all different URLs. So the nice thing about gallery apps is they don't have to contain only FME Workspace apps. They can point out to any URL that you want. So let's open up the FME community, for example. This is our community forum. Obviously, it's not linked to a workspace. We haven't published it to FME server. You can just post it, and you'll see that you can create a link for it. So while you guys are going ahead and entering in the user information, I'll just open this up and show you what it looks like. So Chris@safe will be my community handle. If you want to stay anonymous, please do select the yes please. It'll mask out your name with stars. It'll just show the first character. I'll go ahead and keep mine open. Let us know what industry you work in, and then we can drop a pin on your location. So again, if you want to remain anonymous, this is going to be anonymized by up to 5 kilometers already. but you don't have to put it on your exact location. You can just drop it approximately if you want. So we'll go ahead and run that. And then once we have had a couple of people, or as many people as we can submit that, we'll see in the attendee map what it's going to look like. So a bunch of different people will show up on this map, and we'll get this table to fill out. So we'll just monitor this on the FME server web UI. And we'll talk a bit about monitoring this as we go. And were there any questions that came in on the chat panel that we want to address?
Yeah, there's been lots of great questions. One of them was around authentication, and it was basically how can users are going to log into the application. And basically the answer is to do that, the users would need an account on FME Server. So you would create an account for them, and then when they go to the apps, they would be asked for their authentication. If your organization has Active Directory, you could tie into Active Directory. Let's say you had Active Directory and you wanted to pull in a whole group, you can also do that, and then easily assign them to a role on FME Server to be able to control the authentication that way. So there's another question about the types of geometry that can be done via the geometry picker. So do you want to talk about that, Christian? Can you do bounding boxes, things like that?
Absolutely. So I'll just open up Workbench again while we're waiting for people to submit that. And I'll create a new publish parameter here. We'll make it the geometry type. And just here in this configuration option is where you get all those choices. So you can specify if you want it to be a box, a line, point, or a polygon. So if you want to just create bounding boxes, I would just leave it checked as box. And then if you want to limit it down to a certain scope, so say to your country, your city, or your state, you can specify that with just the lat long coordinates as well. That would be how I would handle it, would be just using this box, because then it would be rectangular. But if you want, you can allow it to be polygons and allow users to enter in as many vertices as they want.
Great, yeah, good. And then somebody asked if the choice parameters, could they be database? Could I have a list of database table names? And the answer to that is yes. It could be. The workspace then would just have to understand that, if you picked roads, then that would be mapped to some roads table and things like that. And yeah, so the choice parameters can map to anything. It's interpreted by the workspace that actually does the heavy lifting. So the interface on the front of the web is merely just collecting the parameters, helping you pick parameters, which is then passed directly to the workspace. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Let's see how many submissions we have here. So this is just our way of monitoring how many people have submitted the job for that user location workspace. And it looks like we have 108 now, so that should be good to show. Close that down
and
here. Thanks
for everybody who did that. That's great.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Obviously, this wouldn't have worked without you guys, because it would have been a little bit more boring to see just one point on the map. So yeah,
and this URL will be available. Will continue to be there after the webinar. So if you want to play around later, yeah, you'll have time to do that as well. So
absolutely, yeah. And if you want to download the workspaces, again, that's all available in the webinar materials as well. So let's take a look at the data streaming example.
Chris, sorry to interrupt you there, but the webinar materials workspace does appear to be failing at the moment. So I'm going to take a little look into that now if I have time. So I'd recommend don't try that one just yet, and hopefully it'll be fixed by the end of the webinar.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Holly.
Holly.
All right. So yeah, back to the data streaming demo that we have here. Looks like we have users from all over the world, so that's great. We can see people from all different industries as well. So a lot of local government.
Australia? Anybody down in Australia? Are you able to move down there?
Doesn't look like it. No.
No. It's pretty early for them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining again. This is awesome to see a spread across the globe. Back into here. All right, so yeah, we've created our workspace apps, and we've shown you a little bit of an example of the user side of a gallery app. So how would we go ahead and create a gallery app so you can share this out to your organization? Gallery apps is a great place to stay organized and really just put all of your workspace apps and URLs that are used commonly every day. So this is a great way to centralize all of your important information, all the links that you would be using. Just put it all in a single place, make it very easy to see, and have tooltips and nice labels so the users know exactly where they need to go. So let's hop back into the FME Server interface. Let's open up a new tab because I think I closed the other one. And let's create a gallery app. So it's very similar to building a workspace app. Again, no code here. You just have to go to the Build Gallery App section. And then let's go ahead and give it a name, very similar to that workspace app. Give it a title. Just copying and pasting from a separate note I have here. And then again, we want to add a description. We're going to be building that exact gallery app that you were just playing with. So we have a couple of different things to note here in the Markdown language is just bolding and adding a URL. And we can also preview that here as well if we'd like. So that's what it's going to look like on the end product. And now let's go ahead and add a link. So as we mentioned before, there's two different types of links. There's the Workspace app, which we can point to the app that we've created previously. And again, we'll have to give it a label, call it user location. If we want to give a tooltip, this will allow users to hover their cursor and see a little bit more information about the link that they will be opening. So enter your info here. And then you can add an image for that icon or for that link as well. Very similar to the Workspace apps, you have the option to authenticate this as well, which is great. At the moment, authentication is handled separately from Workspace apps. So if you authenticated this for just me as the user, but I didn't have access to the workspace, so that user location Workspace app, then I would be able to see it in my gallery, but I wouldn't be able to open the link without logging in. And then down in the customize section, you have the same options here as well. If you want to add stuff like a browser icon, so we'll make that look like it's built for safe software. We'll add a header logo here. We'll add a banner, and then we'll give it some footer information as well. So if you want a demo, you can go here, and then the footer image, you just hop over there, dropped in like that. So it really just takes a couple of moments and some images from your marketing team to really drag and drop the icons and images that you want to see, and then click OK. And then what you'll see is the first iteration of your gallery app. So that would be building one with just a Workspace app, but we want to show that you can point to any URL as well. So let's add a second link here. We'll go to a URL. Let's again use the FME community as an example. Paste that in the URL bar, community, forum, and we'll give it a image.
Lots of good ones there.
Yeah, thank you to the marketing team again.
So that's really that's where all the work is now, is simply finding the images that you want to you put on your webpage to make it look good.
Exactly, yeah, and I will add just a bit of a tip here as well. You might notice that we've used images with a transparent background, so it really makes the images look a little bit better, so you don't see those white bars surrounding the images. As soon as we refresh the page, you'll see that that link has now been added here. So if you did make any changes, as we were mentioning previously, the next time the users refresh their gallery, all of those changes will be published. So that's great.
Right. So you did mention, just on one thing on authentication, you did mention that currently in FME 2020.1, if I have access to a gallery app, but I don't have access to one of the underlying links, when I click on the link, at that point, it'll tell me that I don't have permission.
That's correct, yeah.
Now, yeah, so like everything with FME, gallery apps are continuing to be evolved. So in a future iteration of this, could be 2020.2 or could be FME 2021, the apps underneath the FME gallery, the FME workspace apps that you don't have permission to simply would not show up. And so that's a better experience. And so you'll see that coming shortly. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, that's basically how we would go ahead and build our gallery app. And you can see that you can add as many links as you'd like, and you can just rearrange them using this reorder button. So if we wanted that community URL to show up first, we would just have to click OK to edit that, change it, refresh the page, and now all of our modifications have been applied. They will continue to show up in a straight line, but if you add a bunch of different links, they will adjust with the page as well. So as you move along, they'll kind of rearrange themselves into an appropriate grid size for the screen.
Great. That's awesome.
Let's hop back into here for a little bit more of the best practices here. So what we touched on here is that you can add a lot more than just Workspace apps. You can add URL links as well. We talked on authentication for gallery apps versus Workspace apps, but was there anything else that we wanted to mention there, Don? Or
can I have a gallery app within a gallery app?
That's a great question. I would say you would probably just have to point to a URL of the gallery, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, all the power to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, because at the end of the day, they themselves are URLs as well. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and then again, just this is just a best practice for appearance-wise. If you can, use images with transparent backgrounds because they'll just appear a lot better and you won't see those blocks kind of in a line.
Yeah.
This last one is actually just a bit of a tip.
Your third bullet there, because this is something that people who are using FME server apps sometimes overlook, the last bullet there. So I'm looking forward to showing that. That's really, really fun and awesome.
Yeah, and this last one here is just a nice tip. You don't have to do this because obviously they are meant to be very accessible as URLs. But if you'd like, you can also install gallery apps on your device, be it a mobile device or if you're using something like Google Chrome. We'll show you just how that can be done. So I can actually show this in a live demo because we have the power to do that. So once I'm logged into the gallery app, or if it's public and I've just accessed it, I can obviously just bookmark this, but I have a ton of different bookmarks and I get them mixed up all the time. So I have this very confusing folder system up here. If I don't want it to live on that bookmarks bar, I can actually install it as an app using this plus button. So then I can install the app. Oh, just open on my second screen here, so we'll pull it up. And then you can see it opens in a separate application, separate window. Then it'll also be accessible from the start menu as well. You'll see this new Chrome apps section. So that's a nice little tip if you do want to have this feel like it's more of a standalone application. You do have that option, but it still is a gallery app and still will run through a browser, so any changes will be immediate as well. Right. And then of course, if you want to uninstall that, you can just have that option from the three dots here. Yeah. Go back to the slides. So let's walk through that again. We just went through adding it as an app from Google Chrome, and then it appears in your start menu. And then of course you could pin that to your taskbar if you'd like as well. Yeah. Now the same can be done on mobile devices. So I have an example here with just an iPhone. I've loaded up the gallery app on just Safari, and then if you click on that box with the arrow pointing up, you'll see there's an option for add to home screen here. So once you do that, you can give it a name. You can give this any name you want. So if I wanted to call it webinar demo, it'll appear as an icon on my home screen. And then once I kind of scroll around on my phone, I can open that up and it'll open again in a separate window. This won't be running in Safari. It'll feel more like a standalone application again.
Yeah.
And then of course you have access to all your links, and if any of them are authenticated, you'd have to log in. In that case, it's just a link to the training page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if let's just say that I had an FME server app that wanted an image, and it was on my mobile device, would it, could I just take a picture and have that be saved and become the parameter?
For uploading an image?
Yeah.
I feel like
Yes,
Don
you
knows the
can.
answer to that one.
Yeah. And the framework we're using to build these just makes that, you know, pretty simple for us and for the users. So that's, you know, pretty exciting. As often on mobile devices, your input data is coming from other things that are more native to the device. So yeah. So if you want to get started, lots of resources. This webinar is recorded, and so you're welcome to share it, watch it, and you know, focus in on the parts that you might find more interesting, or share it with other people, watch again later. Of course, we have some links here getting started with server apps and gallery apps. We also have, if you go to safe.com, we always have that live chat, and there's real people there. And so click on that, ask us anything, even if you're getting started with anything related to FME server or apps or anything related to FME or safe. We're happy to help and get you going with your challenges. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to summarize,
go ahead, Laura. Sorry.
No, all right. Yeah, just to summarize, like, yeah, we want, like, your data is complex, but we want to make sure that web apps are not. So we want you to be able to get the most value from your data, to be able to build these apps quickly and easily, so that anyone can access the data that you're making available or run the workflows that you've built to get your data to where it needs to be. So we want this to be as simple and flexible as possible. So that's our goal with this. I'll mention, like, just kind of scanning through some of the questions that are being asked and some of the comments that I'm seeing here. Like, there's lots of really good ideas for how we can make these server apps even better. So I think we've got a really good start here, and this is something that's only going to improve over time as we add more and more functionality to this. So I'm very excited to see where this will go as well. Yeah, so we want to make building these web apps to be as simple as possible. So we want it to be very quick and efficient to build these. You don't need to have custom code or have lots of time spent working on building the infrastructure to make these available. We want it to be accessible. So, you know, web, mobile devices, across different operating systems, all of that should just be easy for someone to click a button and get their data. And yeah, we'd like to be able to save you money so you don't have to hire external developers to come in and build these tools for you, and just make it very easy to scale these up and down as needed as well. So yeah, for getting started, if you don't already have access to FME Server 2020.1, you can download that from our webpage. So we've got a few links in that slide here. If you don't have server at all, we do have access to a 60-day trial. So if you wanted to download that and take it for a spin and get a feel for it, you absolutely can. Or if you need to upgrade from an older version, you can do that pretty easily as well. Server's also available in a couple of kind of marketplaces. So if you're working with Azure and Google Cloud, you can use that to get the software kind of up and running really quickly using those spaces. Once you've got server, you can start building your apps with your you publish up your workspaces and get building your apps and gallery apps as well to share your data and share those workflows anywhere.
Yep, no, that's awesome. That's awesome, Laura. And you can see, for folks online, you can see what we're striving for, and that is really the no-code option. There's lots of options out there for developers to build, you know, really sophisticated web applications. We're coming from the other end, and our mantra is no code. So this has only begun. So as Laura mentioned, a lot of these questions are, okay, now we're going to take it to the next level to even enable you to do more and more with no code, while striving to keep that interface and that experience super simple, so that you can get started and get something working, as you know, in under like 5 minutes, like Christian said. I mean, really now the challenge is no longer coding. It's, oh wow, where do I get those images for my organization so that I can make my web application look like it is from you know, the rest of the organization. So yeah. So Yeah. And on the licensing standpoint, there's many ways to license the FME platform. There's subscriptions, which enable you to pick and choose how many servers, how big of servers, desktops you want. And so there's a number of, if you go to safe.com/pricing, you can read all about it there. And these have the nice thing is it's really an easy way to grow the FME footprint. Just you can add as you go along over a period of a year, and then when the year's up, then we look at what you're using. The cost to get going is lower than traditional. We have our individual licenses, which are perpetual, so not a subscription, but perpetual. We've had those since the beginning of time. And again, also depending on your needs, these are a great way to get FME where you pick and choose the individual licenses. And of course, cloud deployment. We have FME Cloud, which is a hosted FME server running in the cloud. Obviously, you pick the region where you want to be. So if you're in Europe, you'd pick a European instance and that sort of thing. And then you don't have to worry about your hardware needs as your FME server load decreases. You can change that, and there's flexible pricing options there too. Yeah. And last but not least, we have this new way to license FME server, and this is no longer buying engines. So you can think of it as engineless in some sense, that you don't buy engines, you buy time, CPU time, and then you can decide how many engines you want to do the load to as needed. And because many users have peaky loads, so they might have a period in the morning where there's a lot of activity on the server, and so they could have a bunch of engines just sitting there waiting, and then as the work comes in, they would do it, and then in the afternoon, maybe it's quieter. You don't have to you're not paying for these engines to be idle. So check that out. In FME 2020.1, when you're evaluating, we give you 100 hours of CPU time. And because what we're finding with FME Server, we're adding all these great things like FME Server Apps and automations. And the load on the server with these is dependent on what your users are doing. So with an FME Server App, the load on the server that we're using here was obviously more than during this webinar, because we had hundreds of people running those apps. So, and later off in the day, maybe only 1 or 2 are using it. And the server needs to be responsive. There's one thing about web apps is they always have to be responsive. So with dynamic engines, you can buy, you might pay for the work, and you can have whatever capacity you need. And you're not, if an engine is just sitting there ready, but not doing any work, it's not costing you anything. So check that out as well. Yeah,
Awesome.
and
I actually have a note from Holly that the data download example is working now. So thank you so much, Holly, for working behind the scenes and getting that working again.
Absolutely. And actually, as well, since we finished a few minutes early, Don, I did have a question that I think only you will know the answer to. And that,
go ahead.
And that is, we had some users wondering if there's anything else coming within Server Apps land that you could give us a little spoiler about. Is there anything else to look forward to for this right now?
Yes, there are. The short answer is there's lots, but that's kind of a cop-out. So I'll give you some examples. One is the authentication thing we talked about, because it isn't a very good experience if I'm a user and I see 5 icons and I click 3 of them and I just get, oh, I don't have permission, so I'll see 2. The other things is we want this ability not just to simply run workspaces, we would like to run automations as well. So that would be another thing. The other thing that some users have wanted, and we're going to look to add, is this ability to build like a menu on the side, and then you could have the hamburger, I heard it called, but the 3 bars, and you click and they could open and collapse, and and things like that, so that it's more than simply a grid of icons that you click. So those are just some of the things. Some of the other things that people have said is it would be nice if somehow we could have one workspace that I would fill in a few things, and the output of that workspace would then become parameters for another thing. Also, right now all the parameters are fixed. It would be really nice if the value of one parameter, let's say country. I picked a country, so I picked Canada. It would be nice then if I picked the province, which would show up, If I picked USA, maybe the state. So the value of one parameter dictated the value of others. And that's coming as well. There's a big project going on at SAFE for things like that, where one choice determines the value of the other parameter. So yeah, so just some of the things, but yeah. How's that?
Amazing, thank you.
That sounds
I knew you were the one to ask.
So yeah, so also the background maps. That's another thing, is right now the background map is restricted to one choice. Is that right, Christian?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, one choice. You gotta like that. You have a choice of one.
You can do some stuff in here, but I've always left it as is.
Yeah, but we are going to look at, so that you would be able to have your own background map, because there's lots, some organizations would like a background map that maybe is coming from their, their ArcGIS framework, where maybe their own infrastructure was shown on the map. So there's lots of things we can do for that map tool. Probably changing the name from Geometry Picker would be one too, because that's not a very good name. But anyway, that's a little thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you do have any other ideas or suggestions, please do visit our community ideas page and post them there, because it's a great way to share your ideas and get community support as well, because a lot of these are very valuable for our product owners.
And it does make a difference. Like some of the things you're seeing today and some of the things I mentioned have come from users who say, geez, it would be really nice if I could, or some are just say, hey, could you please add? And so we really do. We have product owners, and they one of the places they get the things for the next version of the product is from the ideas. So they really do make a difference. So put your ideas there, vote on other ideas, and it just helps us guide the path of our platform.
Awesome. And then, yeah, don't forget to get your webinar materials again. If you want to download certificates, the workspaces, or the webinar slides, you can access that all from that gallery link.
Perfect.
And thank you once again for taking part in that interactive demo. We don't usually, well, I think this is the first one with a gallery app, so glad to see it worked out after we had fixed up the one link.
And thank you, Christian and Laura. It's for doing all the heavy lifting. This is great, super exciting part of FME Server. And thanks for Holly and others answering questions. Sienna's there, and Rylan, and a bunch of folks. I really appreciate everybody chipping in. We're all excited about it, so it's a lot of fun. Yeah. So, and thanks to everybody who attended as well. We know you're all super busy and you have lots of things to do, and we hope you found this useful. So let us know, your thoughts on the webinar, what we could have done differently, what you wish you'd seen, and what we did well as well. So really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Well, then I think we are probably good to close this down. I'll leave it running for another 5 minutes, just in case anyone has any last questions they would like to get in. We can chat to you on the back end. And then, yes, as we mentioned earlier, if you find you go away and then have questions after the fact and wish you asked them on the webinar, there are ways to reach us on safe.com/community or on live chat. You can just go to safe.com and there's a live chat option there. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're always around and happy to answer any questions. So awesome. Thanks, team. Good work.